This is Eric Rutan of Cannibal Corpse. You are listening to the Scars and Guitars podcast with Andrew McKay Smith.
Hey there, hope you're well. This conversation features the Night Flight Orchestra and Soilwork guitarist David Andersson. The catalyst for the chat is the release of the new album for 2021 from the Night Flight Orchestra titled Aeromantic 2. It's out now. Check it out. In addition to talking about the album and David's life as a guitarist on the road, we dive into his other job, topics surrounding his other job, which is that he's a medical professional. He's actually a doctor. He's a gastro specialist, and we were talking about a condition that I suffer from, which is severe ulcerative colitis, which is similar to Crohn's disease. I know many of you out there have these sorts of complications, so it's fascinating what he has to say about it. So here he is, David Andersson from Soilwork and the Night Flight Orchestra. You were early. It's normally the opposite way, but I understand you're not just strictly a musician either, so must be the dutifulness of your role as a. Are you a GP or are you a specialist?
I'm a specialist in gastroenterology.
Oh wow, I've got ulcerative colitis.
Oh, you do? That's my specialty. I'm like my main. I work mostly with IBD.
Wow. Yeah, gosh, the stories I could tell. Yeah, it actually stopped me from doing it.
Okay. Perhaps we should do another interview about that as well.
Well, it's
my special sort of like subspecialty. I mostly work with IBD and both treatment and endoscopies and everything.
Yeah, are you based in the UK or are you in Sweden?
We're in Sweden right now. I'm in England right now visiting my girlfriend, having some time off. But I work in Sweden, and we all live in Sweden. But yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Well, look, I'll get to the music, and maybe we can thread some of that other stuff in between, because I know a lot of people suffer from IBD related issues, from Crohn's through to colitis, and I had a heck of a bloody awful time with it, to be quite honest with you. And you're someone who knows. Yeah. More than just about anybody else about it. So, but we'll get to that, because the reason we've actually connected is to talk about, I thought it might have been to talk about the Soilwork EP, Wisp of the Atlantic, but because I didn't get an opportunity to chat with yourself or street through that one there, but it's not, it's cool. It's Night Flight Orchestra.
Yeah,
and what you're doing
we can do both. I mean, I'm in both bands, so I mean, it doesn't have to be strictly about one thing. I'm happy to chat about whatever you want to talk about.
Wonderful. Well, look, I've had many conversations with Bjorn over the years, and such as the rate of releases that you guys do. I don't know where you guys collectively find the time to fit everything in, but you're obviously extremely productive people, smart people and productive people. But look, it's a pleasure to get the opportunity to finally chat to you, because long-time fan of Soilwork, it's got to be said, and I've made that jump over to Night Flight Orchestra way back when the first Aeromantic album was that the first album that came out? Was it Aeromantic? Sorry, I should have done some research.
Aeromantic was the last album. Aeromantic was number 5, and this new album, Aeromantic 2, that comes out today, is number 6, I guess. 6,
yeah. I think I've had there was a period of time there where I was having 2 conversations a year with Bjorn. One of them was on the eve of Ralph Santola passing away, and I know he and Ralph Santola were very good mates. That was a hell of a conversation, that one, because I didn't know Ralph, but I'd interviewed him, and we'd got to sort of, you do the email exchange thing afterwards.
I met him a couple of times, and I know, I mean, I wasn't really friends with him per se, but I mean, I met him a couple of times, and he was really, really fun guy, really smart, talented, and I guess he had his demons as well, but
Something though too, which I think is a bit of a lesson for people these days, given how fractured society is. But he's known for having fairly right-wing views, and Bjorn is known for having fairly left-wing views. Yet they were very good friends, and that's something that you just don't see a lot of these days. Unfortunately, it's so bloody polarized out there, isn't it? But look, I'm sort of getting a bit off track, I suppose, from the album here. But look, I do that.
I like the I like doing interviews, and I especially like it when you can go off and
That's definitely
talk
me
about
then.
other things, because that's what, at the end of the day, that's what's important. I mean, to me, like, music it's something very personal and magical in a way. I'm very far removed from the cynical, a cynical person just doing it for, like, as a sort of like business or to pay the rent. I mean, if it's supposed to be special, and what makes it special is usually the stuff around the music as well, not just like, oh, what guitar amp did you use for that, or like
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I've had some of those interviews, but they're like Marcus Jadell. You might know Marcus. He's a Swede, of course, Avatarium. I mean, a guy like him, you go there because he's one of those guitar aficionados, isn't he? He's like a Blackmore type guy, isn't he? And where it's appropriate to go there, I didn't organise a whole bunch of questions around gear and guitars for you, just because I listened to some of your other interviews, and it just, I don't know, sometimes you just get a vibe whether or not something's going to fit or not, But I love what you guys have been doing for a while now, from the perspective that you're giving people another opportunity to get into your musical universe. It's not just about the metal. It is about, what have I written here? Think Go West meets Ultimate Sin era Aussie meets late 80s FM pop. There you go. That's how I summarise Night Flight Orchestra. And I know you guys have done Rod Stewart covers and all sorts of things. But what is it about you guys, yourself, Bjorn, and the rest of the lads in the band, that you can have such a productive life outside of music, and then when you get together, you're releasing up to 2 albums a year?
Yeah, I guess it's because we still enjoy it. I mean, to me, even if I've been playing music for a very long time and on a professional level, but at the same time, it still doesn't feel like work. I still do it because I enjoy it, and I write songs almost every day because I love writing songs, and I listen to music, and I read about music, and I read, whereas I know a lot of my colleagues in the business who are like, they do it just because they can't really do anything else, and they need to continue to be able to, and I know bands where, like, they don't talk to each other. They only do it because they have to. And whereas both with Night Flight Orchestra and Soilwork, we're still friends. We still keep in touch all the time, and discuss music and all kinds of other things. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to play music that I really like, with people I really like and enjoy playing with. And I guess that's why, if I'd hated everyone in the band, and if I felt like, oh, I really want to play this and this, but I have to do this crap instead, then it probably would have been hard. But it's for us, it's always fun to get together and play music, and I guess that's why it's easy to be productive if it doesn't feel like work.
True, but there are people that can they love playing the guitar, but they don't come up with the quality that you guys are coming up with, and consistent quality. So do you have to take obviously there will be a change in mindset, but how much of a change in mindset do you adopt if you're writing material for Night Flight Orchestra and Soilwork?
I mean, not much really. Of course, with Soilwork, you have to, it still has to be some kind of metal. I mean, it still has to be within some sort of metal context. Whereas with Night Flight, you can do pretty much whatever you want, except for metal, but to me, it's still, the older I get, the less I care about genres. To me, it's all music. Of course, I'm aware of what genre different things are in. But when I listen to music, I mean, I don't really. I mean, the things I listen to these days, it's when I listen to music myself, it's usually either black metal or jazz or introverted Swedish pop. And as for songwriting, I mean, songwriting is it's just like another instrument, or it's a skill. Like you can't really, even if you can be like the best guitar player in the world, but you can't really expect yourself to just come up with a song if you haven't done it before. I mean, I've been writing songs since I started my first band when I was like 13. And like I started playing guitar when I was 9. And the first thing I did, like pretty much when I started being able to, play a few notes, I started writing my own crappy riffs. And I started writing cheesy lyrics about werewolves and what have you. But it's always, it's always been, I grew up listening to the thing that first got me into music when I was like 5 years old was my mom's record collection. She had like all the Beatles albums and Rolling Stones and, Led Zeppelin and Jimi Hendrix and classic English pop singles like with the Kinks and Chicory Tip and what have you. And so I guess for me, it's always been about songwriting. I mean, of course, I spent a fair amount of time trying to learn how to play guitar as well. But I mean, it's always been I'm crap at I've never learned. A lot of people spend a lot of time learning every Yngwie solo or Steve Vai solo, and I've always been crap at that because my attention span is too short, and I always end up writing my own stuff instead. So for me, songwriting is always, but it's a skill. You have to it sounds like I'm full of myself right now, but I mean, just to answer your question, I mean, I've never been. I still see myself as a songwriter who happens to play the guitar, because I've always been writing songs, and it's, to me, the melody and the song has always been the most important thing. And then, of course, I love playing shred guitar and I love playing the guitar, but it's if I can't do it in a context that I'm happy with, I'd rather write nice songs than just play shred guitar. But I mean, I'm fortunate enough to be able to do both, and that's lovely.
Well, you're good at it, mate. So yeah, there's no nothing, no arrogance in your statement there whatsoever, from the perspective that Soilwork, you've been doing what you do with Soilwork now for a long time. You're a household name amongst extreme metal aficionados such as myself, have been for quite some time there. But with Night Flight Orchestra, I don't know, I can't remember if I asked you on this question years ago, but what was the inspiration, the why? You're playing extreme metal, heavy metal over here. Why did you decide to go down that direction?
Well, it started. I mean, I did my first Soilwork tour. I did a US tour with them back in 2006 as a session guitarist. It was like after Peter first left the band, the old guitarist. And I didn't know them at all. They were posting an ad or something, and I was like, at the time I was a PhD student and had lots of time on my hands, and they were like, "Oh, look for a guitarist for our upcoming US tour," and it's like I went for an audition. I never met them before, and I went there, and they liked what they thought I was good, so I got the job for that tour, and me and Björn, we when you're on tour together, you need to get to know each other quite quickly because you're stuck in a bus 24/7. And me and Björn, we found out very quickly that we both loved, classic rock. We started bonding over, old Toto and, Boss Skaggs and Whitesnake and, all the good stuff. and so on that first tour, we became friends, and everyone in the band hated us because we were on the back lounge listening to Toto and getting drunk, and we decided like, oh, we need to start a classic rock band because no one is doing this these days, and I didn't get the job with Soilwork back then, which was probably just as good. I mean, but I eventually became a member back in 2012. But me and Björn, we kept in touch, and I played with the Soilwork on and off. And when we started writing songs and trying to find the right people, and Björn was friends with Charlie Giangelo, our bass player, and I met him too and started talking, and it was like, and he's also a big classic rock fan. He listens to all kind of stuff. You always think about Charlie Giangelo, like Arch Enemy and Merciful Fate, and this big dangerous guy in black, but he loves Toto, and he loves all kinds of cheesy pop from the 80s, and so and the other guys were also a friend of ours, and it just but it took some time to like find the right people. You can't just really pick anyone. It needs to be some people who really loves this and really understands what we're trying to do, and we were fortunate to find them eventually. So we started like rehearsing around 2010, I guess. Back then, both Arch Enemy and Soilwork were touring bands, and I had just become a father and everything, so it was a bit messy. But we found the time to get together a couple of times, and the chemistry was there. It's like a relationship, any relationship. It's like sometimes the chemistry is there, and sometimes it's just dead. But with Night Flight Orchestra, we started playing, and I had written some songs, and it was like, wow, it just works. We never had to discuss, it's not like we ever needed to discuss like, oh, perhaps you should play more like this, or perhaps you should, change your approach, because everyone just knew instinctively what we were trying to do. And it just, one of those happy moments, it's like falling in love almost, when you meet the right people and you just have that connection on a musical level.
It's amazing, isn't it, for non-musicians out there? So everybody who listens to my podcast knows that I'm a musician, but for non-musicians out there, it's so difficult to articulate what it can be like being in a band with someone you don't get along with.
Yeah, it's horrible, and I mean, I guess you've been in bands too with, And of course, you can't get along all the time. I mean, me and Björn were very different in many ways, and we fight a lot about stuff. But at the same time, we love each other, and I see him more like a brother. And at the end of the day, we want the same thing, and we just have different approaches to stuff sometimes, and so you should be able to fight without, but we've never had that toxic, in both Soilwork and Night Flight Orchestra, we all have differing opinions, and we're not always agreeing on everything, but we're always able to talk about it. But it's just like in a relationship, when you can't talk about things, it just becomes toxic, and you can't really, you start avoiding each other instead. And fortunately, I mean, we've been able to, get around that.
Yeah. It's just a hell of a bloody awful thing when you've got somebody in your band who isn't rowing in the same direction as the rest of the band, or even you, especially if you're a band leader. You're a band leader in this case here, and you can have people in the group and they just white ant. And they're just so difficult and the lack of respect that can happen in bands is ridiculous. Yeah. There's no other environment like them except for families.
No.
I can't, or maybe an army platoon, I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, I guess the secret, it's always going to be like, if you like each other and have respect for each other as people and musicians, and you're able to talk, and you should be able to fight, you should be able to get angry about stuff.
Yeah, because you're human. That's right, and you're just sorting things out. Yeah, I know. It's like that.
Yeah.
But you had you mentioned Charlie there, and I reckon I've spoken to. God, I'm having a shocker tonight. What's the singer of Arch Enemy's name? Alyssa White Gloves. I've spoken to her. Yeah, I've spoken to her about him, but apparently he's got a photographic memory. He just remembers things. Is that true?
Yeah, sort of. He's like an encyclopedia. He remembers stuff. So, it's really it's really fun. When we were, we with the Night Flight Orchestra, we always record and produce everything ourselves, and it's for the last, probably for all the albums, but it's for some reason I always record his bass. It's I'm always the engineer when he's doing his bass parts, and I always challenge him, and we come up with the most outrageous, no, Charlie, this isn't working. We need to listen to, Pink Flag by Wire, or, the first Gang of Four album, or,
Yep.
We need to listen to Return to Forever with Chicoria. And we take a break, and then we have a drink, and and then we just start, discussing obscure references, and it's a pleasure to. He's one of the funniest guys around, and we always have we also have a quite special relationship, and I'm a bit like that too. My mind is always a bit busy, and lots of stuff going on in there. So the two of us, we can get. Yeah.
What about the two Annas? So their performance, I noticed on this album, Aeromantic 2. Probably more than the other albums. It's not that they were doing anything better. I think it's just that maybe it's the way you've produced it, but I just think that their voices really shine this time around. So did you have a lot to do with the way that turned out?
No, it's been a natural. Björn always he used to always do all his backing vocals himself, and when we did the last album, we were just like, when they became full-time members of the band, had already started recording the last album, and so I guess they weren't as involved from the beginning. And with this album, they were like, we knew that they were going to be on the album, so we sort of like gave them more space in a way, but it wasn't like a conscious thing. But obviously, we've gotten to know each other better, and we know their strengths and weaknesses, and the difference between the voices and who's going to work best where, and they were more involved in the beginning too. So I guess you hear more of them on this album because of that.
Yeah, it's a great response, because I did notice it, and I'm glad that there was some sort of that there was a different approach, if you like, which sort of led to that. Because So, do you sometimes feel? I suppose in some ways I've asked this question, but I'm going to reframe it slightly. At some point, did it sort of switch, and did you feel like you were the Night Flight Orchestra guitarist in Soilwork, or does it still feel a bit like sometimes you're the Soilwork guitarist in Night Flight Orchestra, if that makes sense?
I totally understand what you mean. I guess like when I became, I don't think I've ever felt. I've always felt like the Soilwork guitarist and Soilwork, and the Night Flight guitarist and Night Flight. Because when I joined Soilwork, of course I was a new guy, but at the same time, I'd been playing with them on and off for 6 years, and I knew their whole back catalog, and we have been doing like hundreds of shows together, and I was part of why I got the job was because Björn knew I was a good songwriter, and that first album we did, The Living Infinite, I wrote probably half of the songs on that album, because I've always been, if I wouldn't be allowed to write songs, I wouldn't have joined them, because that's what I like. That's such a huge part of it for me, and I've always said, I've always been quite self-confident as a songwriter and as a musician. I was like, okay, great that I can join you. And Björn knew that I was, Björn knew me very well, and I knew the rest of the guys as well. And I just started writing songs, and they seemed to like it. But of course, it's always like when you're the new guy. But I never felt like I was the Night Flight Orchestra guitarist in Soilwork. I was, the new guy in Soilwork.
Yeah.
But of course, it takes a while to. These days it's more like me and Björn were more in charge of the creative process in Soilwork as well, because it's not because we have to, but it's more like we were the most we write the songs because the others didn't write that many. They're not as proliferative, but they all have loads of input on the actual production and stuff. And Night Flight Orchestra, obviously, that's been mine and Björn's baby from the very beginning. But so that was always a bit more natural. But with Soilwork, it felt, I never felt, like I was just, that guy from Night Flight Orchestra. And especially since when I joined Soilwork, Night Flight Orchestra was nothing. When we did our first album, no one really noticed. We got like a couple of interviews in a couple of metal magazines, but we had no budget. We couldn't make any videos. We didn't have any shows or anything, just a fun thing. And
yeah. Has there been, obviously COVID, we've all been going through this for the last, it's almost 2 years now, definitely a year and a half, but we're coming up to almost 2 years now. But has there ever been discussions, or has there ever been a show or a gig where you've done both bands?
No, yeah. I haven't done it personally because, but we've done festivals where both Night Flight Orchestra and Soilwork has played. But then I've had a stand-in Soilwork because, for various reasons, I had some health issues in the family, and lots of other stuff, and it was a bit too much. I couldn't really, deal with all of it at the same time. So there were a couple of tours and festivals where I had a stand-in guitarist. So I guess like the summer 19, we had a few festivals where both bands played, but I wasn't playing with Soilwork, just with Night Flight, because it was just too much right then for various reasons. But it was quite interesting to watch Soilwork from the crowd.
It must be weird.
Yeah, there's they're playing my songs, and but it was nice. And Simon, the guy who was my fill-in guitarist, he's a great guy, and both bands are friends, so it's kind of nice. We hung out both bands and backstage, and drank beer in the sun, and it was like a family gathering. So it's but that's how it is when you get older. You life gets more complicated.
Indeed, it does.
So you have to but as long as everyone, we all support each other, and the only one who's never replaceable, I guess, is Björn. But that's like with a whole
near to it though now. You've established a dynamic that's been there for 9 years. It's very hard to replace it.
Yeah, but yeah. And these days, when people aren't buying physical albums the way I used to, or we used to, no one really notices who's on the album, to be honest. They kind of recognize Björn, but otherwise it's like, you have to be aware of that fact as a musician. Like, people aren't really aware who's doing what, and that's fine in a way, as long as they like the music.
That's so true. I remember, I'm 43, so I'm probably similar age to yourself, but remember when we were kids, you knew who played keyboards on the Candlemass albums. You just knew. You just got what was going on. Like these days, people just don't give a shit, which is, I still care. I still find out. I know Wikipedia's there. It's actually, technically speaking, never been easier to find out who's played what. And you talk about Charlie, for example. Like, I mean, how many bloody bands has Charlie been in? Yeah. you sort of knew, but kids these days wouldn't, with all due respect to Charlie, greatest respect to the fella, love his work, probably don't know who he is.
No.
You know, so, but that generational thing, I suppose, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it'll come back on.
Yeah, but I remember it's just like when it changed quite quickly. When I did my first tour with Soilwork, then back in 2006, it was still just on the verge of, you know, the whole streaming thing wasn't really, because then people were like discussing this on forums and stuff, like, oh, who's filling in for Peter now and who is he? And, you know, people were like, oh, I want to make an interview with you and on how it is filling in for Peter. And, you know, and nowadays, I mean, we could probably have fill-ins on all kinds of positions and no one would notice, as long as it sounds remotely similar to the album, and you know, which is sad, but you know, it's just like the old streaming thing, or the pandemic or whatever. It's just inevitable, and you can't do anything about it. So there's no reason to, you know.
No, yeah. Have you got another interview next in 2 minutes?
No, it's sort of a familiar name.
Oh, look, there he is. He's right there. You can answer it if you want. Yeah.
Hello, Björn. I'm doing an Australian interview. Hello.
Hey, Bjorn. It's Andrew Mackay-Smith. We've had a mini chat, so you might remember we spoke the night before Ralph Santola passed away.
Oh, yes, I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
Interview right now.
It's all good.
I wouldn't have answered it if it hadn't been you. Yeah, but I can call you later. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Good to chat, mate. No worries.
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. There's always there's this. Yeah. I think, who was I speaking to? I was speaking to was it Andersson in Flames? One of the guys in Flames, anyway. And I was talking to him about Chris Broderick. You know, the guitarist Chris Broderick, and he goes, "We're talking about him. He's sitting next to me." So I said, "Oh, say hello to him for me." And he goes, "Yeah, hello." So they were very serendipitous.
Is Chris Broderick in Flames now?
He did a fill-in for them.
Okay.
Yeah, God, he could definitely be in that band. I don't know. When Megadeth into Act of Denial, I think, is the band, which is a brilliant band. He's just didn't catch on, unfortunately, the buzz for him. I thought he had one of the albums of 2017. But then he found himself touring with, I think he was in Arch Enemy too for a bit, wasn't he? Touring with them for a bit. Yeah. There's few.
I don't know. I know Jeff Loomis a bit, and he's a real nice guy. We met occasionally over the years.
How good is Nevermore? Have you seen like the early and Sanctuary? Those Warrell Dane, my God, rest in peace. But my God, he's such a great vocalist, wasn't he?
Yeah. It's really impressive.
So with A Wisp of the Atlantic, it sort of was released. I don't know whether this is Nuclear Blast fault or what have you, but I just felt it got no attention. And I know it's an EP, but you are Soilwork, so. And every release is quality. So I just sort of thought that was a release that was like boom out there and disappeared in some ways, because I still listen to it.
Yeah, I mean that whole EP was my brainchild. I wrote the whole thing.
Beautiful. Well, it's a stunning EP, mate.
No, thank you. Yeah, I'm really proud of it, and I've had this idea for a long time, of this vision about like doing a really epic progressive track with Soilwork, just because that's something people won't expect a band like us to do, and just to show off the fact that we're quite, we're able to do a lot of stuff that people, they don't think of us as, we're a quite versatile band, actually. And, like Sven's, acoustic piano playing and everything. They're, and there are a lot of things that people won't expect from Soilwork, and I always knew we had it in us to like do something really progressive and out there. But at the same time, we chose to call it an EP because I don't know, it's sort of like took off the pressure a bit. If you say that, oh, we're going to release a new album, and it was a bit experimental and something that we did just because we really wanted to, and something that I really wanted to try. But at the same time, it would have been, if you release it as an EP, you can, people who are into, getting a bit deeper, it will reach them anyway, eventually. And I don't know. And the label too, of course, it's, they expect a certain thing from us, and spending loads of money promoting a 60-minute progressive epic thing. I mean, it might it might be a success, or it might also just. But when you call it an EP, it's just like, it's what it is. It's like something that we do because we love it, and it's interesting, and it definitely inspired us, all of us, I think, and that's why we're still doing this, because at least why I'm still doing this, because I want to keep things interesting. I want to, develop as a band and as a musician and songwriter. And we're working on our next album now, which is going to be a proper album. But I think we've become closer and gotten to know each other even better as musicians because of that EP. And some of the singles, like Death Diviner, is one of the most popular songs on Spotify and stuff. So the short songs are so it wasn't a commercial failure, but if you want to dig deeper into Soilwork, and you can always and if you think it's too much, then it's fine, because we do still play short songs as well. I don't know. Yeah, what do you think about the Wisp of the Atlantic thing?
It's an album that I put on to help me go to sleep. So it's not that it's boring or anything like that. I just think it's vast. It's epic. I do a lot of yard work and stuff here just to try to get the kids outside and away from bloody iPads and stuff, mate. And I have a monster speaker set, and I had that outside with that, and so Bluetooth, and I had it on, and I noticed it wasn't the sort of thing I could put on in the background, because it's got those high highs and low lows sort of things with gaps in between. And I thought, oh, this is an album I need to sort of stick on in the background. But then I did that when I was doing some study, and I thought, no, it doesn't suit that either. So because there's some quite commanding bits, to your point, intricate guitar lines and rhythms and melodies, and it's one of those bodies of work where I couldn't tell you the names of the song because I just put the songs on and I leave it. So I take that as another compliment, because it's one of those things where you put it on and it's not when there's a massive high point in the middle, or the second track's the killer cut, and then you don't worry about the rest of it, which is very common, to be honest with you. Let's face it. That's hence because bands are writing things for bloody Spotify. And I get that they've got to do that, but you guys clearly don't do that. You're writing things, and it's an extraordinarily unified body of work, and I just like the idea of a wisp of the Atlantic. It just feels a bit Viking-like. I'm Australian, you guys are from Sweden, and we sort of still have that romantic view of you Swedes and Danes and Norwegians that there's that Viking heritage there, and we love that. We appreciate that. So it sort of brought me into that world a little bit. Sort of takes you away just for a moment.
Yeah, that's nice, and that's really what I wanted to achieve. Like. I mean, I love writing short songs and catchy songs, and but at the same time, it's personally I have always loved if you have the time to just lie down with headphones and listen to like Supper's Ready with Genesis, or like Gates of Delirium with Yes, or those epic tracks, and I'm also really proud of. we've done some epic songs. It's always me who wants to do the progressive stuff, but we've done some long tracks with Night Flight Orchestra as well, like the last of the independent romantics and Heather Reports, and I mean, at the end of the day, when I'm lying there on my deathbed, I think those are the tracks that I will be most proud of.
Yeah. Well, it's there for posterity's sake, to your point. I interviewed Robin Ford yesterday, and I said the same thing to him with his work, because it is important that you take your time when you're releasing music that's important to you. It's extremely important that happens, that it's a true and accurate reflection of your soul, because it might take, who knows? Nobody's got a crystal ball, but 20 or 30 years, I couldn't name check one now, but how many albums are emerging from the 60s, 70s and 80s that people are calling classics now that nobody had ever heard of back then, is my point.
Absolutely.
So let's go back to when you were a kid, when you were sort of 12 and 13. No doubt you're a smart fella, obviously, but you've got this medical specialty over here, heavy metal guitarist extraordinaire over here. Was that even conceived when you were that age?
Well, I was always, quite brainy. I was quite a lonely kid. I started reading when I was 4, and I always read loads of books, and, I had it pretty easy at school. So it was always in the back of my head somewhere that if I fail as a guitarist, I can always do something else. But I mean, when I grew up, it was all about, becoming a rock star, basically. Sounds pathetic, but, I wanted to be a guitar hero. I wanted to play in bands. And then so I went to music school, and, and I started playing loads of bands, and we got a record deal when I was like 19, and which was with Mike Varney, Shrapnel Records.
I do, yeah. Wow. Okay, I didn't know that. There you go.
We did two albums on a subsidiary label of his, which were a bit more like, some sort of grungy thing. It was like back in 95, so that was what we were supposed to do back then.
Yeah.
It just bombed completely, and I had to work as a guitar teacher, and I hated it, and I just gave up. So I went to medical school instead, and gave up playing for a couple of years. And then I, soon after I got my MD, and I was a PhD student, and then I got the chance to do Soilwork thing, and all of a sudden things were, it grew from there. So, so it's but it's nice. Perhaps it's good. Perhaps I've been dead now if I had became a professional metal musician at 20.
Yeah.
I'm
it's a
happy
lot
with
of temptation.
for now, and I enjoy being a doctor as well. But it's music is always going to be like the first. I've always seen myself as a musician first, and like then a doctor. But I mean, I really enjoy being a doctor as well, and it's added a whole new dimension, and everything is, as long as you like what you do. And I really hated being a medical student, and I hated having to do the internship and stuff, because I knew really early on that I wanted to become a gastroenterologist, and I did my PhD in gastroenterology, and and I had to go through all the other crap, but then I finally could specialize and just do the things I like to do, which is mainly IBD and endoscopies and stuff, and but it was a long journey to get there.
Are you in the public system over there, or have you got your own practice?
No, I work in the public system. I've been working. I've never had my own practice. I've been working at a private clinic. I did that for like a year or so, but I still enjoy being in a hospital more. Like when you have the inpatient ward, you can do the more, you get the most difficult cases, and you can do more like invasive endoscopies and get the bleeding things and like all the dramatic stuff. That's what I like. Sounds a bit morbid, but I mean,
Yeah.
I like the challenge of it. When you work in privately, you can only deal with, it has to be. It can't be too difficult, or you can't have any emergency, And I like dealing with the difficult stuff.
Yeah. In your opinion, though, is it a combination? It's probably a combination of lifestyle factors, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I suffer with. So this is the question I have for you about it. Do emotional issues play a significant role in people suffering the condition?
How do you mean?
Like if you go through a lot of emotional stress, okay, is an outcome that you can develop some sort of an IBD disorder such as Crohn's disease or colitis.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still doing research, and I've been involved in some, stress research too when it comes to stress and IBD. And I have a good friend who's he's the president of the European Crohn's and Colitis Nurses Organization. So she and her, me and her, we've done a lot of research together on that. And personally, I don't think that stress in itself can cause IBD. I think it's more like, but it definitely, if you have IBD, it can definitely trigger a flare.
Oh yeah, God, yeah.
And I do think on a personal level, because it's when you work as a doctor, you're supposed to be evidence based.
Yes.
And we have no evidence that stress causes it. But I think if you have it, you need to have a sort of like a genetic predisposition in your intestinal immune system to be able to get IBD. We know that you need to have some sort of mutation in your immune system in the bowel. And that, I mean, there are like hundreds of different mutations and combinations of genes, but you need to have that predisposition, and you need to have a certain bacterial flora. And then you have to have some sort of like external factor that triggers the first flare. And I have had loads and loads of patients that said like, oh, it started when my wife died, or when I got divorced, or when I went through depression or lost my job or whatever. So on a personal level, I do believe that stress can trigger it can, you have a predisposition to develop it, and then stress I think we know that stress can trigger flares, but we don't have evidence for stress actually triggering the first flare or causing the debut of the IBD. But at the same time, I've been working as a doctor I've been working in gastroenterology since 2003, and on a personal level, I do believe that it's a combination of things, but in some cases it's just very obvious that it was the trigger, but like I said, it's always really hard to make those. Sorry, now I'm going off on a but as a scientist, it's the reason why is because if you it's always easier to study people when they have the diagnosis. Like if you have ulcerative colitis or Crohn's, then you're included in various registers, and you can always include people in studies or trials. But it's much harder if you don't know whether a person will develop a disease or not. Then it's really hard. Then it's always going to be a retrospective thing, and you never know. It's really hard to go back and sort of like measure the amount of stress that person had, and also the time, the connection between time, like when the stressor happened and when the disease debut happened. So it's like we're probably never going to get at least not in my lifetime. We're probably never going to get like the evidence, but but I think. In certain cases, I'm pretty sure that stress can like be the catalyst.
Yeah, I definitely felt that. Yeah, I mean, I had a situation isn't worth talking about within my birth family. So the family that I was born into, where I more or less had to stop speaking to them for a period of time. And then my father died and amongst all of that as well, and wasn't able to go and see him and all the rest of it through that. And it triggered catastrophic outcomes with that.
Yeah.
On top of that, I had a very stressful job as well. And I almost died. Well, to be honest with you, ended up in hospital for 8 days. And because I started having organ failure as a result of it. And I was on Salazapran at the time. Probably know it. Of course you would, yeah. And I was travelling away from home because I was working up far north Queensland, and I wasn't bringing my medication with me. And it just triggered a collapse basically. And I've sort of been. It got so bad I actually had to quit my job.
Yeah,
and that's what caused. I'm very happy with the way my life is now. Believe me, because that acted as the catalyst, if you like, for me to really assess things in terms of stress and how it was affecting the condition. And I made a call in to become a journalist, which people go, well, that's a highly stressful job. But I was more into writing as opposed to a lot of investigative journalism and all of the political.
There's a huge difference between positive stress and negative stress.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
If it's positive stress, it can actually strengthen your whole being if you do something that's stimulating. And it depends on what kind of person you are. I mean, personally, I'm a bit hyper. I have a really hard time doing nothing. I get really, I have a hard time living with my brain if it doesn't get stimulation all the time. I'm like quite a depressive person unless I'm stimulated. And that's why I keep writing songs and doing stuff all the time. And whereas some people get stressed, they need to have, it should be, But I mean, I know exactly what it's like experiencing negative stress too. And so the stress can be so many things. And that's also why it's stress isn't, it's more, I think it's more meaningful to talk about life events, and also there's this how you perceive stress. It's this thing called Perceived Stress Questionnaire, PSQ, which is like a much better tool, but you've probably seen quite a few gastroenterologists, and it's nothing that we as doctors, we don't have the time to sit down and, really dig deep into that, because once you meet a patient, then the disease is already there, and you just have to, do what you can to, And also, as a doctor, it's really hard as a doctor to affect the various stress factors in a people's life, in a person's life. So that's why you tend to focus on medication, because that's the only tool you have, basically. And
well, I take Pentasa.
But it's actually,
Pentasa has been a godsend. I've got to say, that's worked out just orally, and it's I mean, that because of that. The other thing, I probably should edit this bit out too, but no, I don't have to. It's CBD oil. God, everybody takes CBD oil. I found when I found like organic CBD oil, so none of this industrial shit that's starting to invade the market, but go down the road down here in northern New South Wales, and there's a big like hemp growing community. Like you go to this place, it looks like a typical hemp den, but then you'll see cancer patients and the like are just trying to get better. Yeah. That's all it is. Yeah. And I've got to say, mate, I've found that hemp and occasionally activated tincture helps a lot. I've got to tell you, it's like if I'm operating it, if I'm redlining it sort of 8,000 or 9,000 revs per minute, it sort of brings it down to sort of 5 and 6, I find. And that and these things, I have to take, you can see that, propranolol, beta blockers. I just find it's all linked. And if I'm doing a very stressful thing, like you sort of got to when you go through an event like what I went through, you've almost got to start over again with your health from the perspective that I couldn't stand up and even do public speaking. I'd shake. And the like, it just went right to the core. And it was almost like this nervousness that never sort of went away. It was kind of an anxiety, but I guess I'm pretty lucky in that I've never been a depressive person. I've just always sort of, if something, I've got angry about things that happen in the family, if you like. And I often wondered if those things were the catalyst, or whether it was, I think you're of course, you're the doctor here. You're spot on. You got that the condition could exist, and then you get a trigger and boom. And then these emotional events just make it far worse. And so it all just comes down to lifestyle and just occasionally having a drink to sort of bring your spirits up and your blood pressure down a little bit. And doing things like this, talking to people like yourself has been magnificent, mate. 600 and something interviews into it, and I just love doing this. And I remember talking to Bjorn about you being a doctor. I just didn't, of course, how would I know that unless I did my own, how would I know that you had this specialty, which is a specialty that I need maintenance on in the day to day, so it's great to talk to you on that perspective.
It's a very special group of diseases. I mean it's if you're going to be a good IBD doctor, you need to be a bit intuitive.
Yeah.
As opposed to like if you have a myocardial infarction or a stroke or a atrial fibrillation or you just follow, like, you have the standard operating procedures, like what you're supposed to do. But with IBD, it's never that straightforward. And you don't have this, like, this standard, you don't have the magic bullet that works in everyone, and it's also very much, like you said, it's also very much about psychology and the whole fact that it's, for many people, it's really hard to talk about. Like, oh, I have to go and, like, I'm shitting blood 10 times a day, and it's not something you bring up in everyday conversations, and that's also, a lot of people think it's a stigma, and it also often, you often get it when you're a young adult and it's a really sensitive age to begin with, and then you get that sort of crap on top of it, and and it's also finding the right medication, and that also suits the life you're living, and it's a very stimulating thing to work with, because there are no standard solutions. I have this inverted Asperger. Like, I like chaos. I like I hate routines. I hate when things become, repetitive. And working with IBD, you never get bored, because, it's not just about the inflammation in the bowel. It's also about, what person does that bowel exist in, and And I, like you said, it's one patient can, like, get this medication, and it's just like, bam, everything is perfect. And other people, you have to, like, go through 5-6 different treatments, and
That's so true. Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? So the human body is an amazingly fascinatingly complicated thing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. Look, I'll let you have the last word here, okay? So we've talked about the music, and we've talked about your role there in your as a medical professional. But for you, mate, what do you hope the future holds?
For me, or for the world?
But let's go with you, and then if you want to answer the second part of that, to the world.
I mean, personally, I've had a horrible year. I've gone through a divorce, and I've had a major mental breakdown with both depression and various problems, and I'm still recovering from that. But and I'm still far from but I mean, it's just life. You get a crisis every now and then in life, and it's been really tough. And I'm still under. I still haven't got any proper diagnosis, but I mean, it's been some sort of crisis reaction. It's been really hard, but at the same time, I've been able to. These days I'm functioning again, but it was real difficult for a while there. And so right now, my own, on a personal level, I'm happy to be I'm feeling better and being able to do stuff again. And, but that's on a personal level. And otherwise I'm a bit, to me, the world is a bit depressing at the moment, both with the pandemic and also with, the whole right-wing movement across the world, and the whole dumbing down of society. There's a general, like, when people, there are so many strange movements out there, both, racist, homophobia, like the abortion laws in Texas, and, people mistrusting science and thinking and all this conspiracy theories that are able to, like, actually, people talking about fake news, and it's just this whole dumbing down of society as a whole, which makes me really sad. But but it goes in cycles. I guess it's going to get better again eventually. It's been like that for the past couple of 100 years. You get like the dark ages, and then you get
come back on. Yeah. It's if I could remove one thing from our lives, I've got to say it'd be social media, because I'm seeing what it's doing to society, and just this people compare social media users who argue with each other to dogs behind cages, and there's some truth in that, but it just shows this absolutely disgusting side of humanity, that people will attack people that they don't know based on 280 characters or less.
Yeah. And that's why I never read the commentary sections on social media. Like if you release something, or I never read the commentary sections. So I don't need to. I mean, the people if I meet people in person or like talk to them, then it's fine. But there are so many people out there who spend so much time just having an opinion. If I hear a song, I don't like it, then I turn it off. I don't spend like 20 minutes writing about why I don't like it on a fucking commentary section. Because who cares? I don't care if some random stranger from somewhere doesn't like my song. I don't care why he doesn't like it. You don't have to like it. It's fine. You have there are quite a few other songs you can listen to. So it's like I guess that's also part of the whole dumbing down thing. Like, why do you spend energy on that? Perhaps you can learn to write your own songs instead.
Yeah, I find that as a podcaster, I've sort of got a bit of a rep as a subject matter expert on Cradle of Filth of all bands. And I've interviewed most of the guys, the 90s era, so the pre-2000 era. Basically, I'm trying to interview everybody that's in that band for the purposes of writing a book. Okay.
Yeah.
But there's some of these closed fan groups that I joined just out of curiosity, and I'll post an interview that I've done with Stuart or Nick Barker or something like that. Yeah. Oh, my fucking God. You get some, excuse me here, but some fuckwit from the Midwest of the USA or wherever they might be from. Nothing against people from the Midwest of the USA. I'm just picking an area. I could have said Sydney. You know what I mean? But my point is,
there are idiots everywhere.
So. Yeah. But just he said something to me about, he picked up something that I'd said at the beginning of the conversation, and a bit like, and he missed the point completely. So I just sort of said, "Oh, hang on a second." He goes, "Well, mate," he said something like, "Well, maybe if you can't take criticism, then maybe you shouldn't be doing this, eh? So don't do it anymore," or something. And I'm like, "What the hell?" Like, it was because I don't get negative feedback. So when I get it, it's like, "What the hell does that?" It's very strange. I mean, I can't see any evidence too often anyway of you guys getting a lot of negative feedback, but you just look at these people and think, so you're not a creator, you're not a doer, you're a reactor, and you're trying to tell the creators and the doers that they should accept your fucking criticism because you're you. And that part of me just, it gets angry at the moment, but then, I've got kids and a mortgage and all the rest of it. I've got far bigger things to focus on. So I just tend to switch it off and move on. No worries. Well, look, I hope to see you guys down here sometime again soon. God knows when we're going to get out of this bloody thing, but
yeah, absolutely.
Love your work. Yeah. Love the work that you've been doing, and I just it'd be nice to have a beer with you when you come down, mate. Yeah.
Super. But we'll see. I mean, we might release a few more things before we're able to go anywhere anyway. So.
I think that'll unfortunately be the case because our borders here, you've probably been following what's happening here, our borders, I'm in a state where we're locked off from the other states in Queensland, so we're not even open to other parts of Australia, yet alone outside of Australia. So it's, touring, mate, it's got to happen again sometime soon. We need it. It's the lifeblood of the heavy metal and hard rock fan.
Yeah. Well, at least we're going to continue to release stuff. I think it seems like people are enjoying the fact that both Night Flight Orchestra and Soilwork we're still productive. We're still like releasing stuff and being out there, and because people seem to need music now more than ever. And some bands are like they've been sitting around with a finished album for 2 years, waiting for the chance to get out and tour and promote it properly. But we were like, this might take 5 years, and we're not going to sit around doing nothing. So we're going to continue to do, great new music. And one day we'll have a hell of a problem trying to figure out the set list.
Yeah, well, that's a good problem to have, I think. So many killer cuts to choose from,
Yeah.
Mate, thank you so much again. Enjoy the music. Love your guitar playing. Please keep doing what you're doing, as I'm sure you no doubt will for a long time. And I look forward to the next conversation.
Yeah, super. Thank you.
No
Nice
worries,
talking to you. Yeah.
Likewise.
Have a good weekend. Yeah. Take
Thanks.
care.
You too, mate.
Bye.
Catch you. So there you have it, my conversation with Soilwork and the Night Flight Orchestra guitarist David Andersson. If you enjoyed that chat, there are many more just like it over at scarsandguitars.com. Not only that, you'll see reviews, news, blog entries, and I'll put up a link so that you can check out some of my books fairly soon. My name's Andrew Mackay-Smith, and I'm the host of the Scars and Guitars podcast series. Until next time, it's goodbye for now.